live.
Okay.
Okay, welcome. I'd like to convene the Board of Health Hearing Committee. It's a public meeting, November 3rd. This is 1 o'clock, call to order at 1 o'clock on my clock. For Mrs. Kolchar, who's here to petition before this committee. If you're not familiar, we'll just go around the room, introduce ourselves. I'm Kyle Markison.
Julie Morowski.
I'm sorry?
Julie Morowski.
Rowski?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Cindy Gaffney.
Hi, nice
Hi.
to meet you.
And then you may know.
Melissa Adamson.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Darlene Volland.
Volland?
Mhm.
Nice to meet you.
And do you want to introduce yourself? Yeah, you don't want to sit up here, go for it.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Ann Marin Department.
Nice to meet you.
And thank you to Dan from my team, appreciate it. I got it that time, I got it.
He was thinking hard though.
Okay, so up first is an overview of process to open a new food establishment in McHenry County.
Okay, so I did provide it in your packet, and actually I made it a little bit more specific to try to make it more relevant to what Ms. Kolchar's establishment is, which is a mobile food permit. So typically we go through a plan review application, and that is really the paper review for everything. So we're looking at the configuration and waste disposal and water supply and all those types of things. We do look at those for every new establishment in the county. We do look at them for every mobile that comes to the county, whether it is new or whether it is previously constructed, because we oftentimes get mobiles that have been in other jurisdictions and come to McHenry County. So it does a couple things. It creates that this is what we agreed that the food establishment is going to entail. And then if there are any deficiencies, we list what those will be, and then those would be corrected. And then the other thing is it presents or provides that historical document so that we keep forever essentially, so that if it's changed or anything in the future, we can go back to that to say this is what we approved, and we have that as a reference. So it helps the process to be straightforward. Once that paper review is done, then the construction or any modification, if necessary, would take place, and then we go to the inspection stage that everyone has before operation. So for the mobiles, our environmental health practitioners are going to look at, configuration, smoothly cleanable surfaces, that they have the right sinks in there, review the menu, all those types of things. We do request an inspection for the plumbing portion of it by a licensed plumbing inspector, confirm that the plumbing is compliant. And we do that because we believe that they are the most appropriate expert and professional to do so. And then regarding the ventilation hood system, some jurisdictions will require fire department review. We don't have any of that regulation in our code, therefore we make that as a recommendation. So when all that's completed, the operator is given the approval to operate, and the permit application that we're discussing today is for an annual mobile food establishment permit, and that will allow the operator to operate every day, anywhere in the county, multiple locations in the county, without being an inspection every time prior to operation, like any other, food establishment. And then the inspection frequency is relevant to the risk classification. So, any questions or anything to clarify on that?
No, seems straightforward. These are the same policies that we follow every time.
Correct.
Questions, anyone? Okay. On to the presentation of the appeal by Hungry Truck Company. Mrs. Kolchar.
Yes,
Did I say
so, yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Goldfish Brain was working this
Yes.
time here. So I understand that that's the process that is followed. And basically we're sitting here today because I asked a few questions and I kept asking questions, and the answers that I was receiving didn't seem to align with the ordinances here. For example, the plan review that I referenced very specifically says that it's for future construction. And it also very clearly within the ordinance defines and states that it is something that shall be submitted prior to any construction initiating. And as an existing food truck, which I'm currently licensed in the state of Wisconsin and Racine and Kenosha counties throughout the entire state of Michigan via Marquette County, and then also in Lake County, Illinois. So I am not doing any construction. There is no construction on my truck. It's established and I'm currently licensed. So I pushed back and I said, how does this apply? And why do I have to submit a schematic and equipment manuals, you know, and layout? And I kept asking, where is the statutory requirement for that, whether it be an ordinance, state level requirement? And there was nothing that was provided to me. So Ms. Nam had a, I'm not sure what your, it was a review, I guess, that you performed?
It's the
or-
first stage of the appeal process, and that actually is appeal to the administrator, so that's actually done by Mrs. Adamson, who's the
Okay.
public health administrator.
Okay, so.
But I coordinated, so I get it.
Got it, okay. So that was reviewed and determined that indeed the language is very specific in the ordinance that a plan review does not apply to all businesses that want to operate in McHenry County. It's specific to new construction prior to it beginning. So that was the outcome of that, but then within that first stage of the appeal was a statement that a plumbing inspection is required. And I requested, okay, can you please point me to the ordinance that, or the state statute, or the FDA food code, because that was also referenced as well, where that would be required, and those links were included in the packet that was posted on the county portal as well. And I read them very carefully, I read them very closely, and I did not see anything in there that was a state level or FDA mandated requirement for a plumbing inspection. And I would have a further question on that of, okay, what does it entail? I mean, I have to call a plumber and say I need a plumbing inspection. Does he have to fill out a form? There's no forms that were provided to me for a plumbing inspector to complete that I could submit to the county. So to me, that's a little bit vague and confusing. If this is a mandate, shouldn't there be a form that an inspector should say that I checked off these are the standardized items? Because plumber A might do a very different inspection than plumber B, right? Where's the standard for that? And I wasn't given any standard for that, and I kept asking the question, and I guess here we are today, because I kept asking the question. And I would, if there's a statutory requirement that shows this is where we need a plumbing inspection, I would happily do it, but I haven't been provided that information, so here we are.
Okay.
And for me?
Yeah, does that conclude your appeal? I guess just for that moment, that's the end of your.
For that particular issue, yes,
Okay.
because to me, that says, as my understanding is, that's the gating issue as far as getting a full yearly permit. Here is this plumbing inspection. That's my understanding. If it's incorrect, I'm willing to stand corrected.
I just didn't want to transfer the focus until you were done.
Sure.
Okay.
What, question of order, do we ask questions during this period, or do we wait till the end?
So our goal here today is just finding a fact and a recommendation to the board as a whole. I think probably best let's hold our questions until she's provided her initial appeal, and then Director Nam is going to provide a response, and then we'll have questions and answers after that.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Okay. So I think we have just a little bit of disagreement about what the requirements are and perhaps why we're asking for some of these things. So I did provide in the packet several sections within the public health ordinance that refers to inspection of facilities for compliance prior to issuance of a permit. And so, you know, what I would say about that is that
I'm sorry, is there, did I miss a copy of that packet?
no, it's attached. I sent you the email that was attached to the meeting, on the meeting portal. The packet's attached. So I believe that the ordinance does give us the full authority to do it. I think the ordinance is very clear in several locations that our responsibility is to conduct inspections to ensure that this facility is compliant prior to it. So plumbing is a little bit different in that in the state of Illinois, plumbing inspections are completed by licensed plumbing inspections. So to answer Ms. Kulchar's question about, is there differences between A or B, inspector A or B, we're not asking that a plumber be doing it, but a plumbing inspector. And that is another level of certification that they have that allows them to go out and do these inspections for, specifically for compliance.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't have that attachment in my email. I'm
If you
sorry.
go, so under the,
The email directed you to the portal for the meeting, and in the portal for the meeting, that's where the attachment will be.
Sorry about that,
No,
thank you.
if you go to the McHenry County website.
Let's give her time to catch up.
yeah.
Yeah, let's just take a pause and.
Sorry, thank you
It's okay.
folks, I appreciate it.
I didn't realize if you click live on the link, then.
Oh, is that what happened?
The meeting goes live on my phone.
Yeah, because I heard something and I was like, wait a
It's
second.
delayed, it's
Oh.
delayed, and there was no people
Here.
in the picture.
It's
Oh.
loading.
It was
takes
just
a minute 'cause there's
empty
lots of
tables
stuff.
and I hear voices and.
Yeah, I had found the,
That's weird, it sounds like-
link that you had sent, I found the portal, I
Should be
just
right on
didn't
it, so go down a
see
little
the
bit.
attachment.
Board of Health Committee on Tuesday, Friday. Yeah, they probably have extras.
She's gonna get Dan.
That's Board of Health.
Here's what?
Let's see, go down.
Dan from IT in case we have any
So
other.
bottom.
Oh, is there something not working? or-
Sure, just if she has, if she
Oh,
struggles
I
with
see.
Yeah.
Tim?
could be.
See, because you're on the 15th,
IT.
14th. They
Hadn't
limited
met
it,
him.
and I do think it's lower.
This is my first time meeting him, I should.
Dan,
Dan,
his
yeah.
name is Dan.
Yeah, well.
Oh,
I-
I was just
Dan,
Dan.
right here. Okay, you're exactly right. So when you click on
That's my job.
Yeah, I know.
it, so
It's okay.
those are the links. That's the packet.
Oh,
Be
I
nice
missed
to
that.
sit in the
Okay,
peanut gallery.
I see.
No.
Okay, we'll take a minute to.
I'm a big peanut.
That's-
And then this is.
Yes, board
Just-
documentation.
Usually you're the one
That only because I take that.
running this.
That's your personal address or business.
I like sitting in
address.
the peanut gallery.
I appreciate that, thank you.
I don't know if I have what it takes.
Okay, she has located that.
Okay.
You want to get a chance to take a look at it for a few minutes?
Okay. I think it's still going.
I have two things that I need to tell you after that.
Okay.
So don't run.
I won't
Really
run.
quick.
Mr. Kolchar, you have access to it now?
I have access to it, yes.
Perfect.
Tell us when you're ready.
Yeah, take a look at it.
I think it was the last 2 pages,
Last 2 pages, thank you, that was all I was going
right,
to
the
ask.
requirements, Patty, that's where we're at.
You're talking about in the ordinance?
In the packet of what
I
was
see.
provided,
Yeah.
Patty has summarized some of the
Okay,
pertinent sections of the ordinance.
okay.
Okay, I'm in like the last 3 pages.
Page 35 of 36.
I believe I have it. Typical process for issuance of permit or the second page here? if I could-
After that.
That's what we've talked about, keep going, these are just the definitions.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So these references come out of the public health ordinance. One is Article 1, which are the general provisions that give the department the authority for issuing permits, conducting inspections, et cetera. So in that section, it does say that when we receive an application, we're going to conduct the necessary evaluation and make an inspection of the reference business establishment, et cetera. And so there's another section, this one is specific in the food one, is that food prepared, to determine the extent of compliance with provisions, we may require or accept reports from responsible authorities where such establishments are located. Now, I included this one because I recognize that the home base is out of Lake County. I'm not suggesting that all the food is going to be prepared in Lake County and brought here. What I am saying is, within the ordinance, we have tried to make it clear that we recognize that we don't need to complete every inspection. There are multiple things. So if we have a brick and mortar establishment, we're not looking at the building specifications, the municipality is doing that. In this case, we're dealing with a mobile establishment, and so we do defer to the people, that are the experts in that field. And in this case, I'm referring to to a licensed plumbing inspector. So there is that section. And then finally, under the same Article 3, no permit shall be issued unless it's found upon inspection to be in substantial compliance with the requirements of the ordinance. So I acknowledge that the ordinance does not specifically say the applicant shall provide a plumbing inspection report. But I would tell you that there are multiple multiple situations that are similar to that when we open facilities. For instance, if a food establishment is operating where there's a water well, we're going to require a sample from that water well to ensure it is safe, although it does not directly say you shall provide a water sample report at the request. I would say there are multiple, things like that where we just are asking for the documentation to confirm compliance with the ordinance. So I do disagree with the petitioner. I believe that the ordinance gives us full authority. I think that as staff, we try to use good judgment and ask for reasonable and relevant documentation, not something that's not really related to it. I would tell you from, the plumbing inspection portion of it, plumbing is a public health issue. Plumbing requirements are located within the Illinois Department of Public Health because it is a public health issue. So things like safe materials and, proper drainage and connections and vents and, waste tanks and water tanks, things like that are important. One, to be able to handle food safely. And two, because a lot of what happens after we open the establishment is that it falls then to operation and maintenance. And proper construction facilitates proper operation and maintenance to ensure we don't have problems down the road. So our entire objective is to prevent problems. So we do offer a variety of permits, which would allow the petitioner to do some type of operation in the county. But we're saying by giving a permit to operate a mobile establishment anywhere in the county, that this is a necessary precaution. And so what we've done in the past to facilitate the process, because I think this was another question, to facilitate the process, we have worked both with the Illinois Department of Public Health plumbing inspectors, and we've worked with the Department of Planning and Development plumbing inspector. I can tell you that it's much easier to get the Planning and Development Department plumbing inspector available, and they have committed to doing a simultaneous inspection with us to complete that. So there is no additional burden to complying with this requirement. There's no cost to it. We're going to have a single inspection. We're going to do the environmental health part. The plumbing inspector is going to do the other part, and we will provide a report. And on that report, it will either say that everything is great and operations can move forward, or these are the things that need to be addressed. So we're really deferring to the plumbing inspector to inspect the plumbing as appropriate for that mobile unit to assure that food is handled and prepared safely within the food unit. I think that is.
So there's no cost to, did I hear you correctly on that?
There's no cost for you to have a plumbing inspector inspection. There's no cost, there's no additional time. It's a matter of ensuring that the plumbing is compliant with the requirements.
Okay.
Mrs. Kolchar, and when possible, just please try and allow her to finish, and then we'll get to a back and forth on that.
Sure, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Just I want to make sure, I covered everything I had.
Just let me know when you're concluded.
No, I think what I would like to say is, in terms of recommendation of what we think would be reasonable is to ask the petitioner to bring the unit here, that we will conduct that inspection, and that if there are deficiencies that the plumbing inspector notes that would compromise food safety, that those would be addressed. And then when those are satisfactorily addressed, if they exist, then we would issue the permit and, move forward.
Okay. Does that conclude your
It does.
response? On to questions and answer, discussion by the Board of Health. Any
Yeah, Ms.
questions?
Coulter, do you have any issues with that? With what the proposal is, to just bring your vehicle to have it inspected at free of charge?
No, I don't have any issues with that actually, and I hope this doesn't come off too pushy, but if that had been offered via email, I certainly we could have spared everybody's time here today. I feel like this is something we could have discussed if that was the option, or I was unaware that that was the option.
So you have no objection to bringing the unit here to be inspected along with a plumbing inspection at the same time?
If they're simultaneous and done, absolutely. I've been saying via email
Okay.
more than once that I would happily drive my trailer out here.
Any other questions? Do you have any questions, Juliana?
What's the correct way to word it? Should this not be resolvable by the recommendation or the hearing that we heard today about bringing the vehicle in, is the company allowed to have a temporary permit until that gets done?
Okay. So, I know we've gone through this, you probably heard it a couple times, but yes, if I could just speak to that
Okay.
just for a minute. So we do have the higher standard because of been issuing the mobile permit. This allows her that flexibility to do those things. When we issue a temporary permit, which is an option for her unit, is that, and we do have, I looked at the numbers today, 36 similar ones that are, I'm not saying they're identical to your unit, but there are mobiles like that operate under temporaries because they're missing something that they can't get the mobile permit. And we account for that by additional inspections, additional monitoring, and we put those controls in place, you know what I mean, to make that safe. So yes, that is potentially an option. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but the answer is
That's good.
yes.
No, thank you for, I knew that there was a difference between temporary and permanent
Correct.
one, so.
Yes.
But if she had a temporary permit,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, then that means it's for one location.
That's correct.
So if she goes and takes her trailer somewhere else to another event or something, she'd need another temporary permit.
That is correct. And that's the control that's in place, is that we're looking at the location, we're looking at it set up properly, we have that monitoring, we have an educational requirement, and a performance requirement. That is exactly correct.
Can you walk us through, let's see, Ms. Coulter is in agreement to bring her vehicle here, what that timeline would look like and what the process would be?
Certainly, it's as straightforward as we discuss a couple dates and I speak to the Department of Planning and Development to ensure that the plumbing inspector is available. And then we just get the 3 people together here and then the inspection would be completed. And time frame is, I'm just guessing, it's 30 minutes to an hour and, you know, it's done. He might have questions for you, I don't know.
And then how long is that permit good for?
So the permit that is being applied for is an annual one, so that is on the same rotation as all of our others. So you're kind of in the middle of the year, so we're looking at 6 months and then would renew with everyone else by May 1st. And then they are annual permits, so a year at a time.
Thank you.
One moment. Dan, are we still okay?
Yeah, we switched to a static background. I'm just trying to get the camera
Okay.
back
I just
up.
don't want to, in case someone's watching, I don't want them to miss out. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you there. Anything?
No,
I just asked for the length of the permit.
Yeah, the timeframe for the permit.
I have a number of different questions, but do you have any?
Is the permitting, sorry for my stutter, prorated for the 6 for
It
6
is.
months?
It is. Anything after November 1 is 1/2 of the annual rate.
Hmm.
We do one proration, half the year.
And then I do have a question. The first part of your presentation, which by the way was very clear, and I thank you for that. You were talking about established or new construction. Where does that fit into this discussion? It seemed that you were emphasizing the fact that it was construction or under construction, new construction. Are we referring just to the mobile unit?
I don't think that, obviously
Did
you
I
are in this
misunderstand
case.
that? Okay.
No, you understand it perfectly. So when that original component was written, it was written when, 99.9% were brick and mortar places.
Okay.
And so I would say that's on me because I review it for things like that, so I appreciate that. And that is an easy clarification to put in the ordinance. So moving forward, it will be very clear that the expectation is new to McHenry County, including existing mobile units, and then there will be no confusion. So, as soon as we complete an ordinance revision, I keep my list for anything I might have missed to go back and make it clearer.
So what I'm hearing is that Ms. Coulter is willing to make the appointment to schedule the vehicle for inspection. Is there anything more that needs to be discussed?
I just have a couple of questions. On that topic of new construction,
Yes.
I'm assuming the, similar situation would be a restaurant that closes, opens under new management. There's no new construction, but we would still re-inspect it,
Yes, we do.
right? Because I'm assuming the permit is not just merely tied to the foundation or the building itself, but to the new operations and new things
correct.
coming.
That's correct.
Okay, so we may be able to clean up the ordinance, but I think it'd be fair to say that if we open a new restaurant, you'd assume that it was inspected, even though it wasn't new construction.
That's actually captured in the ordinance and with specific language. Actually, in the ordinance, a transfer of management is addressed
Okay.
in the county level ordinance.
It is, and that the permits are not transferable. And then it always comes up, and I think what you're referring to here is that, you know, if the building were constructed in 1979 and not remodeled, let's just say it could happen, then, you know, that may not meet the same standard that we have in 2023. So we do have provisions in there when there's a change of ownership. If there are certain things, we think hand sinks are very critical, so those must be installed. But they might have something that we wouldn't look at currently, but has been accepted and used appropriately over time. And the reason we have that in there is because if there is a problem with performance when it's done as we're going along, we're gonna address it as we go along.
Two other questions. You said before that you're licensed in Wisconsin, couple counties, I think,
Racine and Kenosha,
and you're licensed in all of Michigan,
whole state, including the Upper Peninsula.
but you're licensed in Lake County in Illinois. I'm assuming did they go through this process?
No, sir. And that's one of the reasons I was a little surprised at the requirement that this would be necessary for McHenry County.
So they issued you a permit
Absolutely.
with no inspection at all?
Oh, well, no, there was inspections, but there was no plan review and no plumbing inspection necessary.
Okay.
They just came to on-site inspections during operation.
Okay.
And I can explain why.
Okay.
Would you like me to?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So in Lake County, they do not have the same permit categories that we have. So Ms. Kulchar's unit in Lake County is licensed as a temporary. It is not licensed as a mobile. What becomes confusing is that they offer a seasonal mobile that allows her to operate more freely than our seasonal mobile does. But we have had discussions with them. We sit on the same committee, you know, at the Northern Illinois level with the Northern Illinois Public Health Consortium, and I would tell you that their food program coordinator readily admits that they are moving in our direction, not the other, that theirs is behind. And so I do recognize that. I would tell you that I feel firmly that ours is the right approach.
But the benefit to Ms. Kulchar is that she gets that approved here, it would carry over to Lake County.
I don't know if
Not
that's
that we have
true.
reciprocity, but we would always share any documents that we had that would ease that process. You know, so if you went over to Lake County, let's just say they had that same, we would go into our records and say, hey, we had this done, you know, and you could say, I didn't have any renovation or remodeling after, and we'd be happy to provide those records. In theory, yes, would ease the process.
Do we issue a plumbing certificate of some type to her to facilitate that, or is that just within our record keeping?
It's in the record keeping because we don't have the authority to issue anything related to plumbing.
Okay.
So there's probably an elementary aspect of this, but in the ordinance here, my understanding was that an application has to be created. I just want to make sure we've checked all the boxes. Have you completed an application?
I have.
And we have an appeal in writing with the reason for the appeal?
Yes, all of that is in the packet.
Okay.
It looks a little different because it was done via email, and
Yeah.
I apologize for that. I would in future probably do it a little more formally, so it's easier to find in the packet, but yes, it is all there and it's compliant.
No worries, I just want to make sure I've got the things
Um,
all clear.
Could I ask a question of order? If Ms. Kulchar is in agreement that this is a process she would undertake,
Mhm.
would she be willing to revoke her appeal and then just go along with the process?
I think that's reasonable. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
I don't think I understand what
Yeah,
that means
since-
to revoke the appeal.
Well,
as
you
far as-
presented an appeal to this committee, and we'd have to enter in a decision. If you elect to revoke your appeal, you can go along with the process that was outlined by Ms. Noem, that you would bring your vehicle, get it inspected, and everything would be good to go.
And just to clarify part of that too, this committee can make no specific decision. We'll make a recommendation to the Board of Health as a whole, which will occur at the next board meeting.
So that puts
So
more
it would be
time into
delay.
the, it'd
Yeah.
There will
be
be
a
delay
delay
there.
in moving you along.
It sounds like, I just want to try and facilitate and mediate here. It sounds like the process necessary to complete this or get, some kind of completion here is no cost, would be same day. You would accomplish the things the Divisional Director of Environmental Health is looking for, and your unit would, assumingly pass, right? Because it's already licensed elsewhere. It seems like that would be the more straightforward process. But if you want to continue with the appeal, then we would consider finding, consider following this fact-finding mission and make a recommendation to the board, and there will be more delay. I'm just thinking this might be it sounded like you were a little surprised that there was no cost associated with it, so I wanted to make sure
Indeed.
you're aware of that option.
I was definitely surprised, and apologies for my interruption regarding that. I
No problem.
also don't really come to public meetings, so I don't know the format
I know.
of this.
We're pretty informal too, so there's a lot of, we just
Yeah, this
keep it, we want you to,
Yeah.
we want everybody to be comfortable, right? We're here to solve a problem, that's it.
Well, I'm okay with leaving this in the appeals process and letting this move forward, because what if there's another food trucker behind me and they have the same questions? Wouldn't this be more of a potentially they could find this as a public record for themselves so that they could follow this if they needed to, for example?
Right, so understand the educational part of this. Let's separate it into two different things. One, ideally, you'd like to get your vehicle, your unit established so that you can do business within McHenry County. That's something that if you go through the process of bringing your vehicle in, having it inspected with a plumbing inspector through Ms. Nome's department, would be facilitated. If you're waiting for our opinion, what he's saying is it has to go to the county board, and
Board of
then
Health.
we would,
Sorry,
Board of Health, sorry, Board of Health, for
It'll be the
a discussion.
20th of this
The
month.
ordinance issue, I think Ms. Nome has recognized that there's some clarity that she can bring to moving forward. That would go to an ordinance committee for making recommendation changes. I think you brought up some good points for clarification, and I think we all appreciate the confusion you experienced in this. But what I'm trying to get at is, if your goal is to get your vehicle moving and get into business with McHenry County, you can revoke the appeal and still say, I make recommendations that these corrections are done, and then Ms. Nome can make some presentation to the board at a future date. I'm just saying, you've got two different things going on that you want to accomplish. You want to accomplish, is what I'm hearing, you want to get your vehicle on the road, but you also want to make it more easier for someone else not to have to go through this.
Oh, yes to both, but I'm still okay with remaining on the record through this appeal process, and here's why, quite frankly, this has been dragging on since September. I call it September 1st. I'd have to look at the email for exactly when this is. So I haven't scheduled any events here because this has been frankly tedious. Probably not just for me, but probably for everybody involved.
But you did just have an event in Lakemore a couple weeks ago.
But I did the temporary
Yes.
permit,
Mhm,
and
exactly.
I did not book anything beyond that.
Sure.
A, because of availability, because they didn't have space available, and B, because this was pending. So I haven't booked anything, and we're coming to the end of the year, and there's not a lot of available bookings left within the immediate time between now and November 20th. So that's why I'm okay with, yes, I do want to get rolling, yes, I do want to get moving. Business is tough at this time of year, and I think it's okay to remain in moving forward in this process.
Okay, so can I get a clarification on the petition itself then? Is the petition for changes in the ordinance, or is the petition for, so that's what you.
Specific to the plumbing.
It's specific to the
component.
plumbing, so you will need to enter another,
Well, I don't think they're actually mutually exclusionary.
She can continue
I
the,
believe that between now and November 20th or whatever date
Right.
certain works, we can have that inspection and we can resolve it.
Right.
I think
I see.
that what you're maintaining though is that you still believe that the ordinance is unclear in terms of the plumbing inspection. I maintain that the ordinance is very clear and that it's reasonable to do it. I think that's what she's asking, that the hearing committee make a finding of fact to move it forward. Would you say that's correct?
Close enough. If I could offer one point regarding the plumbing inspection, and I can see, I can understand your point of view on that, but then the counterpoint would be for particularly a mobile unit like mine where I use Edda's Kitchen in Highland Park. That's where the plumbing primarily that would have any risk to the public is done. My sinks and my plumbing on my trailer and my unit are specifically for warewashing. I have a standard 3-compartment sink with a sanitizing station as the final compartment. So I think given that light as well, or that perspective, I don't do vegetable washing on my trailer. I don't do, because I can do all of that at Edda's in Highland Park, right? So I don't treat my water there as potable, even though it is municipal water and it is potable water. I don't treat it as potable. I don't offer it to the public or anything like that. That would be one of the pushbacks that I would have
Would be an
regarding.
exception. So it's kind of like an exception in your food truck? This is not the norm?
I'm not quite
Except
honestly
that
sure.
that's not the correct interpretation, because the warewashing portion of it and cleaning and sanitizing was one of the integral parts to prevention of foodborne illness. And backflow prevention as it relates to 3-compartment sinks, and we have a water tank on this, we have a waste tank, there's size differences to account for not providing a backflow into the 3-compartment sink. There have been documented foodborne illness outbreaks associated with those types of situations. And I would just argue from a public health perspective that exactly what she is describing is one of the main concerns we have with doing it. I understand what you're saying about the plumbing at the facility. We're talking about the plumbing in the unit and its relationship to safe food handling.
So it's not, there's no way we can separate out that.
That's correct, in my opinion. I'm giving you my opinion, right?
So I
So-
guess, can you clarify then for me, because I'm still a little
Yeah,
bit
I'm-
confused. What is our committee going to recommend, not that, I don't want the answer, what are we basing our recommendation on to forward to the committee? I don't need to know what the answer is at this point in time, but what are we addressing that's going to be put forth to the committee for review?
I am looking right now to find, and I apologize, in the email chain, I've lost my
Yeah,
focus
I
here,
too.
so let's just all take a moment. So what is the appeal exactly?
The appeal is that the Division of Environmental Health is requiring a plumbing inspection as part of the inspection process prior to issuing a permit. And I'm maintaining that the public health ordinance as written provides that authority for us to require that. And I believe Ms. Kulchar is saying that it does not.
Okay, does that sound
Separate
appropriate?
from your willingness to bring the truck in.
Correct, I would add to that I simply have asked for the, and you've provided some ordinance and some things, but I read them differently than you, so I think, again, it's an interpretation issue, so I was hoping for something very specific, saying that a plumbing inspection is required, because I actually have seen, especially just to counterpoint what you mentioned regarding well water testing, I actually have seen requirements in the Illinois state code, and I would have to find that again, I didn't have that as a quick reference, but I actually have seen where sampling is required for well water, for example.
Right, I'm very familiar with those also, and it's required in multiple locations. I'm just saying that it's not always wrapped up in a single code requirement, that sometimes you have to look in different places. So, absolutely. I would also say that to me, it seems like a very logical step, if there is a requirement in the ordinance, that there has to be some process to verify that that is compliant. And in this case, that is an inspection of the plumbing. My argument is that it is best done by a licensed plumbing inspector. We're happy to facilitate that process.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, your appeal is you don't believe a plumbing inspection is necessary?
My appeal is I haven't seen the ordinance, whether in a single ordinance or through several ordinances, where that is required.
Okay.
That's my appeal.
And our ordinances are typically more higher requirements in some cases than the state or in other counties around us.
Oftentimes, right. So we do have yes, so we have the ability to be more restrictive. I'm just saying that I think that the ordinance is very clear in that it gives us the authority to require what is necessary to determine compliance. So I believe the ordinance has what is required to ask for that plumbing inspection.
So I have the email here where you're asking about an appeal. Was there a specific, do we actually have an appeal piece of document that says this is specifically what I'm appealing? State the reason.
Page 11 in the document was where the appeal was. It was the email that said,
Thank you.
No, it's just an email, we don't have a form.
it's not a form, it is
No,
an email.
well,
It
that's
just has to be.
That
a
was
written-
my question.
Has to be
It
a
doesn't have
written
to be a-
written statement.
I figured there doesn't have to be, yeah. Okay, I understand a formal plan of reviews. So as written, per the McHenry County ordinance, this email serves as my written petition to appeal the decision that a plumbing inspection is required. There we go. Okay. More mandates. Our state level mandate would have required it, yeah. But we're just a little more descriptive than they are. Okay, so that is what her request is, the appeal specifically. She's appealing the decision that a plumbing inspection is required. I think we've had a a fair bit of Q&A. I just want to point out, so I think it's clear to me that you want to continue the appeals process, also schedule to get your vehicle inspected. More than likely, assuming everything is working, functioning normally, that process will be concluded before the Board of Health meets, and these things will run concurrently. You understand that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
If the
No, that's
health department and if Ms. Nam, if
what we're here to do, so.
commission's fine with that,
We'll,
yeah.
we'll make that happen.
In the end, all we want, our focus is to make sure people are safe, that's it. Okay, any other questions? I think now we'll move on to finding of fact, and do you want to lay that? This is the first one we've done, how long since we've had a hearing committee?
Since animal control.
How
Oh,
long?
no, since the,
I've been here,
it's
what,
been-
6?
no, we did
No, I've been here 4
Really?
years?
we did one on the garbage. land.
Who haven't on the board.
It's been several.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so forgive us if I don't know exactly what process. We're all finding this out together, so finding of fact, what is there a process for that?
Yes, so the finding of fact would be your determination as a committee as to whether or not the department staff acted appropriately and in compliance with the ordinance. And so then after that, the recommendation would be anything that you would want to recommend. So in this case, I don't want to put words in your mouth, anything that you would
No.
like to recommend,
Yeah.
of course.
Like we can all go out for ice cream?
That could be a recommendation also.
Can order that.
I was thinking margaritas.
That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, both. One concern I have here is I note a number of times in this email thread that Mrs. Kolchar is requesting, she's emailing in, trying to follow up. She said, I've sent 2 on this already. Was there some drop in communication? Do we have, this is, I'm assuming, is the totality of everything that the Department of Health has received?
Well, there's been additional emails about scheduling a meeting and things like that, but this is essentially the information that we have. We also have our file on it. I did go through that file, and I mean, there weren't additional emails in there that I missed, so I cannot answer that question. I would say we are not perfect, and we may have not provided a response as promptly as we would like, but we do try to respond as quickly as we can. And the other thing is that we do have always multiple food establishments undergoing the same process at the same time.
Mhm.
So, I don't have a better answer for that portion of it.
Is there, as part of our process, whether it's environmental or any of the other departments, when these things come about, is there a particular form to capture that trail? I mean, are you aware of anything?
Yes, I can only answer for plan reviews. I didn't mean.
No, go ahead.
I can only answer for this particular process, but yes, we track when it comes in, we track when we get information we're waiting for, and when it goes back out, and the total time, and things like that, yes, we do.
May I comment on that as kind of the recipient or the lack of recipient of communication? That was something that I was frankly very shocked and disappointed about from the health department, that it did take over 2 weeks. And frankly, the only reason that I got any response was because I came in person and dropped off an application. So that was basically, essentially the driver to how I believe we are sitting here today, because I did send multiple emails asking for, after my first email asking where's the statutory reference and authority from that, after that, it took 2 weeks, follow-up emails, and an in-person visit before any movement was received.
So I can see here that a number of dates, as you say, from the 18th through the 22nd. I'm not gonna, there's a lot in there.
There's a
I
lot.
understand this has been a frustrating process for you. There's a lot of things that our staff also juggles. I'm not using that to excuse anything, but people are human, and nobody here is setting out to do a poor job. I think we can identify some areas for improvement or potential, we definitely always look to be improving. So I'm sorry you went through what you went through. It is frustrating. We're here now with you, right? We want to make sure you're heard. I can imagine being in that process, that would have driven me more to want to, like, I'm gonna come and change something. I'm gonna go through this process, right? Going in for a nickel and for a dollar. I'm just gonna go the whole way. I get it. So it's good learning for us too, to make sure that, and I don't know if you feel, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. I'd like to think that you're not being singled out, this was just the process, the system working. So again, I apologize for the delays in that. I believe it went then to administrator, you provided the first review for appeal.
Right, because initially it started out as the plan review request to not go through plan review. So that was, Patty and I sat down and we said, okay, we can waive that. And then I think it was after that, that the plumbing,
What did you waive?
the plan review requirement.
Ah.
But we didn't waive the inspection requirement or the plumbing component.
Can you clarify what does the plan review consist of in this
Patty, I
context?
think she's got it written down, but Patty can
Right, so
go
that's,
back through
that's that paper review of the plans, the schematics, the equipment, so that we are in agreement and have that historical documentation of what that food establishment will entail. So it's sink locations, surfaces, smooth and easily cleanable, what equipment will be utilized, et cetera. Layout, so we have proximity to hand sinks, those types of things.
Okay. And these they're all important because you're determining the distance between things and how much cleaning space there needs to be and how much.
Sure, flow of foods, adequate refrigeration,
Okay.
the right types of sinks and sink locations so that they can be used, those types of things.
Did you have a question? Noticed you.
No. No, well, I did actually, and it's kind of it's not that important a question, but in your experience, is 2 weeks an abnormally long period of time?
Yes,
What
ma'am.
is the usual period of time that you experience?
The Michigan County, Marquette County, I forget his title, gentleman that I was dealing with in Marquette County, he responded to me within an hour
Oh.
Well,
routinely.
Yeah, with all due respect, I would say
It's a little unrealistic.
that's great.
Yeah.
But I also think, and again, this is not an excuse, but
Yeah, lucky.
we had 3 directors, or 3 people out, I think, during this time frame. I believe Patty was out at a conference for part of that time. Again, not as an excuse, obviously, we can always look at how long it takes. It's not our intention to delay a process. To Patty's point, we have multiple things going on, so I feel like I can empathize as a fellow human being that, like, if you're waiting on something and that's really important to you, that's frustrating when you feel like you're not getting a response. But staff are diligent and follow up and try to get that information as quickly as possible.
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I may, a simple email of, I have seen your request and I'm working on it. Whereas instead of feeling like I'm emailing into a black hole, quite frankly,
Or maybe if we could attach a tracking number to it, and you could follow the process just by accessing that tracking number, as it does like USPS or UPS or any of the delivery things, they have tracking numbers. You just have to access that and find out where the process is. I have no idea how to do it.
I don't know that we have, do we have that capability really
I
to
don't-
say exactly?
We do not. I think that if I understand what she's saying correctly, is that general questions were not responded to in a timely manner.
Yeah.
When the application was received, when we reviewed the application, when we received the appeal, and I worked through that with Melissa, those were all within the timelines established in the ordinance.
Okay.
And so I understand what is being said, and we will work to improve, those. We do get emails every single day from multiple operators asking similar questions. And so we try to divide them to train staff. So if we missed one or it went to the wrong person or Christine was out or something, then we need to tighten our internal process, and we will do so.
So just to clarify, that 2 weeks was not outside of any window in our ordinance for response?
If we're talking about a plan review being done and getting that response, we try to complete that within, I believe it's 7 days, Christine? Correct. 7 business days, so very close.
Okay.
If I could, sorry to interrupt, but if I could lend some clarity, that initial communication window was prior to any application being submitted. This was what you might call just fact gathering for me
Right.
after having read the ordinance
General
and reaching
questions.
out for, exactly.
Yeah.
So
So-
that was a 2 week of
So that also,
emailing into a black hole, so to speak.
That's as I understand your point, absolutely.
so that also wouldn't fall under any We don't have a requirement to respond to you within an X amount of time
We do not. but-
outside of that
Although-
process.
But it's.
Although we want to.
Right.
But I'm looking for violations.
Well, I'm not trying to find any violations. I'm
I am.
more, okay.
But when we receive that, our intention is always to respond the next working day. So I don't
Okay.
know, I can't explain that today.
Yeah.
I didn't look at that specifically, but I can.
Yeah.
But it's always to provide a prompt response and give people the guidance they're
Sure.
requesting, always.
And we're not here to solve all these, right? We're not, this is not, the focus of this is not to figure out some more technological, better way to handle that. You know, it happened, that's what happened. In terms of admin review, then your determination was?
Well, so again, the initial part, we didn't review this piece, right? Because this is what prompted the appeal,
Mhm.
right? It wasn't,
This
as
piece being the
the
plumbing
plumbing
inspection?
piece, correct. So now, could we have gone back and reviewed the plumbing piece? I think, Patty and I did talk about it, but this is consistent with every other food truck that we permit.
Sure.
So I think in our discussions, it was clear that we would not recommend any changes to that process. We were willing to waive the plan review. We do this oftentimes in other, like food establishments. Patty was talking about the clean surfaces, you know, and so oftentimes people ask for waivers on what those surfaces can be based on like the ceilings and old tin ceilings, so they wouldn't necessarily meet the specific requirements. People often ask for those types of
Yep.
waivers based on performance, and then we provide, you know, oftentimes the decision is, yes, we're gonna grant you that based on performance. So if the performance, you know, in a year's time, when they go and do the inspection and it fails performance, then we have the option of rescinding that waiver that we granted.
Can I make a recommendation then?
Sure.
Finding a fact first.
Yeah.
Yes, the finding of fact.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to do. In terms of finding a fact, I'm presuming that we just lay out what are the salient points here, and then we can have a recommendation.
And the recommendation is anything that you would like to recommend?
Do you have, are you, trying to think, is it best if I put out into words what the finding, what I have found to be fact so far, or did you have a presentation on there, or a recommendation? in that
No,
direction?
no, I mean, I have made mine, is
Okay.
that I believe that the ordinance gives us that authority. I think it's an appropriate, reasonable thing to ask, and I think our staff did act appropriately in this regard. So, no, I mean,
Right,
Yeah, I think
So-
you all have to decide if,
if you're in
We acted
agreement, or if
yeah.
we're not in agreement, correct.
so the finding of fact, you have a food truck, a mobile unit of some kind, you want to serve food in McHenry County. You're required by the county ordinance to be permitted by the Department of Health. We're all clear on that. In terms of what is involved in receiving that permit, is there any reciprocity that we recognize with another county? Yes or no?
We don't have any formal reciprocity
No.
agreements.
Okay,
but can I ask for clarification? Are you asking if there
Does
was
her-
a documented plumbing inspection?
does her vehicle being permitted in Lake County provide her permitting here? No.
No,
Okay. I'm assuming outside of the state also doesn't count.
that's,
Okay. So she needs a permit for it to operate in McHenry County. Does it matter where the food is made or how it comes to be here or anything like that?
in terms of her permit,
In terms of her ability to serve food in McHenry County with a permit?
she can operate out of the county. We have provisions for that. So she can do it, I mean, if that's your question. You know, she's gonna have a commissary outside the
Somewhere
county,
else.
she can prepare food, bring it on that truck, but the truck still needs to be permitted and meet standards, right?
Okay. And as part of our ordinance, does it stipulate in there that we require a plumbing inspection in the ordinance itself?
Not specifically.
Okay. Are there other inspection requirements that we have that if the ordinance is vague or broad, are there other instances where we require things that are not specifically enumerated?
Yes. And in this case specifically, we asked for an inspection of the commissary facility. We asked for a commissary agreement. That is to confirm that she has an approved commissary and it meets standards. Those are similarly not specifically listed. They are just provided to document compliance.
Sorry, what is a commissary?
That is the facility to which
Commercial
she
kitchen.
will bring
Thank
her,
you.
yeah,
Commercial
it's another commercial kitchen where she's gonna store food, maybe prepare food, clean and sanitize the truck, those types of
So
things.
she provided that as far as her application?
Correct.
And that's not required as
It's
part
not
of?
specifically enumerated in the ordinance.
Okay.
If I may, it doesn't use the word commissary, but I do believe that it does say a licensed facility within the ordinance. It does have more specific language. I would have to take a moment and look for that within the ordinance, but I recall seeing something very specific.
The purpose of the ordinance is to, number 4, to establish standards for food and sanitary facilities and controls in food establishments, to regulate the inspection of food establishments, and to provide for examination and condemnation of food. Additionally, number 5, to establish a system of controls over the site review, design, construction, materials, installation, operation, and maintenance of private sewage disposal systems, and the disposal of residues therefrom, and the disposal of wastewater from structures served by private sewage disposal systems, not as applicable there. Number 4 seems to be,
So it does say provide for.
intent, the general intent of this ordinance is to regulate all acts which may be necessary or expedient for the promotion of health or the suppression of disease, including but not limited to regulating the public health nuisances, food establishments, vending of food and beverage, private, semi-private, closed loop, and non-community water supplies, on-site wastewater treatment and disposal, public swimming beaches, housing, solid waste management, environmental health and safety, animal control. Under inspections, I think there are powers and duties of the department to make, number 2. Number 1, to issue permits or registrations as required in this ordinance. Pretty clear, you need a permit to operate in the county. Number 2, to make such inspections as are necessary to determine satisfactory compliance with this ordinance. It's pretty broad. Permits, C, it shall be unlawful for any person to operate any establishment, business, or operation or conduct any activities within McHenry County, Illinois, requiring permits under this ordinance who does not possess a valid permit issued by the health authority. So as far as the ordinance goes, to my mind, it's very broad. It is quite vague. It doesn't enumerate literally everything. And I think that is typically the goal of such documents and laws and regulations. I find it unlikely that we will be able to specifically enumerate every particular instance in any field, in any facet, where with such an evolving and modern world. Director Nam mentioned, a facility from 1979. There may be food trucks back then. I'm not aware of them. I wasn't alive. So
Ouch.
Did he say something?
barely. But I'm driving home the point. The point is things change, they move forward. To me, this ordinance appears that the department, and in this case, the divisional director of environmental health, can undertake and specify such requirements that are reasonable to assure the public health. We've already concluded that you're required to have a permit to operate within the county. The vehicle's required to be inspected, right, as part of an inspection. You're appealing only the requirement for a plumbing inspection. I think there is a very good case to be made, as Director Nam has made it, that a plumbing inspection is reasonable, especially as it does not cost you nothing in terms of dollars or time if it can be scheduled at your mutual convenience. That, I believe, concludes my finding of fact. Does anybody have any thoughts or concerns, questions? The members of the committee, Juliana, Cindy?
No, I do agree with the specificity issue because years ago when I worked at Summerfest, I was involved in permitting food establishments, and we had like 3 pieces of paper and that was it. But because things changed, and it was all done on paper, because I'm way older than this one, and I worked there well before he was born. You know, I mean, things changed so much. And even at that time, for one thing, it took a lot longer because it was on paper, and there was only one of me and 7,000 of them. But secondly, there was no tracking ability outside of the one little file case. You know, things just took a lot longer. You couldn't be specific because nobody would have been able to do anything because if you were that specific. Things changed so much in the 2 years that I was doing that job, which, by the way, I did not like. That people were objecting to the way it was written because it wasn't specific to 1971 instead of 1969. There was no way. Well, and that's a temporary thing, so that's not really applicable. You know, it's not analogous to this situation. But 6 months from now, the technology may come out that things have changed entirely, in which case the ordinance would need to be updated. But broad spectrum things like this type of inspection, or saying new construction instead of mobile food truck is, you know, I think reasonable people would agree this applies. And I think the reasonable people kind of train of thought should apply to a lot of the ordinances, especially those that have been written over the course of decades and maybe have not noticed at the time to update or whatever, look at the old ones. So that would be my only, you know, my only answer to the specific wording that you may have been looking for. That's asking a lot. As far as you'd almost have to have somebody doing that like on a daily basis, looking through the wording. I understand what you're saying, and it is frustrating to read something and read it one way and have the people that are making the decisions see it a whole different way because that's what they do. You know, I mean, that's how they've understood it in this area. But I think there's some leeway to be granted in that area. Does that make sense?
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I would only counter that I think that if it is necessary that it should, if it's this critical, and if it is, to Ms. Knopf's point, a potential hazard, a significant potential hazard, that would be worthy of the specificity necessary. That would be the only counter thought that I would offer, but I do hear what you are saying.
I agree, the critical stuff should be, you know, right, as up to date as possible.
But I think the language could.
Encompass.
The language should be to allow for but not limited to. That's the way the language should be for the department to
Yeah.
to broaden it if they need to.
Yeah, this goes back to the ordinance in general, that the department and the public health administrator at large has the ability, with a lot of latitude, to take any specific actions necessary to protect life, safety, and health as it regards to things far beyond food establishments. And if for no other reason than that, you know, that's an unwieldy way to do it, and it's something that I don't even think we did during COVID, I'm not even sure, maybe a few instances, egregious instances. It's not something we pursue normally, but there is that authority to do that, and it can't always be very descriptive about literally every instance. I agree with everything Joanna has said. I wish it were more clear. I think more unfortunate is that you struggled through this process because the delay it hurts everybody. So I'm very sorry that you experienced that. I think my position, I've said how I see it, and
I think the finding of fact is that Director Nome acted within her authority to require plumbing inspection.
I agree.
so you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Then I agree as well. And my recommendation, I believe, if I can speak for the committee, my recommendation to the Board of Health as a whole would be that during this process, we found that the director operated appropriately. There may be some ability for operational improvement, and that we will use this as a learning opportunity to improve our services. apologize personally that you went through this delay.
Thank you.
But first and foremost, we want to make sure that we want to prevent, foodborne outbreaks, so.
I would add to that, takeaway would be maybe look at the verbiage in the ordinance to make some changes.
Would you like, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to ask, since the ordinance has been brought up regarding that, one of the confusion points that I had, one of the reasons I pushed back on that is I'm a small startup business. I actually have a full-time job as well, and technically also a part-time job. So I work all the time. I cleared out my life savings to start my food truck, right? So while the fee for a plan review might be only $140, again, my understanding was there was also a fee for a plumbing inspection and no clear path to accomplish, prior to now, to accomplish said plumbing inspection. So I assumed there was a fee associated with that. And that is obviously then on top of the permitting fees themselves. So that was one of my big reasons for pushback, is that I'm seeing a $300-400 extra cost on top of a permitting fee. And that is something that for a small startup business, that's significant for me, especially in the context of if I have a limited number of events that I'm scheduled for, and my profit margin is this big, and well, now there goes my entire profit margin. So my overhead for even just for my insurance for my trailer alone isn't even covered, just because I have to give paperwork to the department and pay the department to review the paperwork. So from that perspective, that's onerous in a way, because what I don't understand is what is the plan review providing that an in-person inspection won't. I understand, your perspective on it and that you want to document that and see that, but wouldn't there be the performance history as mentioned previously for, okay, my surfaces are cleanable, readily accessible, my temperatures are maintained. So I guess where is the benefit of paying the extra money for a plan review that is not obtained with the in-person inspection while I'm operating? That would be something, if the ordinance is going to be revisited, is that something that can be added to it?
I have an idea of why that is, but I'd like to hear her feedback.
Sure. So, part of it is that you're providing, specific information that may not be readily available to us, because when you have a fully constructed, particularly a unit like yours, I'm not going to be able to see everything. I'm seeing the surfaces, et cetera. So really it is, our opportunity to ask questions, make sure we're on the same page, all those types of things. I do understand what you're talking about, the cost. I would tell you that as, part of our project that we have as a goal for the food program and have funding to do so through our local health protection grant is to clarify some of these processes online. For instance, if you had been able to just go online and say, okay, mobile, I'm going here, 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 that answers a lot of those questions, which alleviates some of the frustration and then kind of gets right to the point of those types of things. So we are working on that to move that forward, which I hope then will provide more information. But in answer to your question about the ordinance, whenever we do an ordinance change, we always share it with every food operator, everyone that we can think of that might be a stakeholder to get their opinion, to take that into consideration. So my short answer is yes, my long answer was just what I told you.
Other question, is there to your point, because you mentioned something that was, I was gonna ask that question, is there a checklist or a punch list that you give them with their application so that they can follow the process along?
Yes, that's not perfect because that plan review application is the checklist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you go
Looking
to
at
the, yes, and you see it then, write your equipment here, and then do you have this, yes or no, and then you go to the next one. So the application is the process and it's multiple pages. We're trying to do something more simplified that is more meaningful to different levels of operators. It's one thing if you're like a chain restaurant opening and that you have people that fill it out for you. It's another thing if it's someone like this who's working 2 jobs and is trying to do it, in between other tasks at night. So that's what we're trying to make better.
Yeah, because having gone through similar processes with Dane County Farmers Market in Madison, and getting licensed for the kitchen and then getting everything else, electrical permits and everything. You're not prepared when you sit down to answer all those questions. So if you had a list that says, these are the items you need to gather in order to fill out this form, that might be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
number of different thoughts, like, I remember we went through this ordinance review process, and we sent it out to all the stakeholders. I think I remember hearing that we did not get any responses back.
We always, Patty always compiles the responses that we get, and that then moves on to the county board.
And then I respond to the
Yep.
people who.
So we respond, yeah.
Maybe I recall that it wasn't as many, like,
It wasn't 100.
yeah,
We had probably 20 responses.
yeah. That's fine, but it's an interesting process. One other thing, to keep in mind, you make mention of plan review, right? Once again, I can't get through a meeting like this without revealing what I do. You mentioned your job, right? I've got a full-time job, I've got a part-time job, I'm volunteering here, right? My full-time job, I'm a firefighter paramedic. If you're gonna open an establishment for anything, you're gonna have to have a fire review also, right? And why do they do that before someone comes and walks through it? Well, because there's a lot more that, there's just got to make sure all that stuff's in there. And so the person doing the inspection can know what they're looking at ahead of time. They can study it. So I understand why the plan review is a part of that. Interestingly enough, that we don't require a fire inspection of your trailer, because do you do any cooking in there?
I do.
And you have an
and
ANSEL system?
I absolutely have an ANSEL system.
Do
I
we
believe
inspect
there's-
that?
We do
There's a
not.
state level requirement, to my understanding, for that, and I did have
Okay.
that done.
Because I wouldn't have been surprised if she'd asked for a fire inspection, and I would have been interested in that also, but we don't do that.
We do not, but many of the municipalities, if you get a business permit to operate within their municipality, will require it at that level.
Okay, so another example of, we could require that too. It's not listed in here, it's not specifically enumerated. But also agreed on the mobile food service establishment plan review application, it doesn't say anything in there about, it says plumbing, but it says a floor plan, so we could be more descriptive probably. All right,
I have a comment I'd like to make. We have an opening on the Food Advisory Committee for the county board. Would you be interested
Yeah.
in serving on that?
Wow.
do you live, no, she works in McHenry County, it's okay, yeah. Do you live in McHenry County also?
I do not. I live in Lake County,
Oh, okay.
actually.
But we
I-
hardly ever meet.
I won't hold
But
it
if,
against
for the
you.
purposes of, you've delved into a lot of information, so you're ahead of the game and most people, and I just thought you present yourself very well. It'd be interesting to have you, we have a vacancy on the committee.
I would love to be considered for that, quite honestly. I have a note here that before even reaching out to the health department or to Ms. Miller in the first place, I actually read through the ordinance myself. I read the Michigan State Food Code. A little bit about me and what my day job is. I actually work in pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing, so I have FDA regulations. I live, eat, and breathe them.
So you like
sadly.
documentation?
I don't. But I make a very good living at documentation, so I've been forced, frankly, in various job roles to learn regs and learn how to read them and learn ordinances and how to read them. And I won't reveal what my part-time job is, but it involves the ILCS, the Illinois Compiled Statutes, so.
Okay.
So I have some familiarity with that.
Well, we don't meet that often. The committee, I don't know when the last time they had a meeting was, but
Not for
I'll tell
years,
you,
it's an
yeah.
ad hoc committee,
Yeah.
so we haven't really had an issue that rose to the level of, bringing together the group to discuss the impact on the industry type of thing, which that is typically used for.
If you're interested, I recommend following up with the administrator, Melissa here afterwards.
I definitely will, I appreciate that, actually.
Does anyone have are we clear on the finding of fact and the recommendation that I will make then to the Board of Health in our next meeting?
Can you restate the recommendation for the record? I think
I wrote them down.
you did.
As well.
The recommendation is that Director Nam appropriately completed her duties and that the requirement for a plumbing inspection is upheld.
and that we would like,
But I think the recommendation,
It's-
you're talking
right, the finding of
of
fact,
The
right, that's what I was trying to
recommendation
get
was
at.
operational improvement and looking at the verbiage in the ordinance and improvement of communications to.
Those are recommendations to you, yeah.
But those are the
no, our
recommendations in the
recommendations
process.
for the,
As a result of the,
So the Board of Health is just that this appeal is sustained or, denied, I guess, in this case, correct?
Right, but as part of the hearing process, I think you're making recommendations
Right, we
to
are.
the program as a whole for overall improvement.
Yes.
My understanding is that this committee could come to no true, it's a recommendation to the Board of Health to what action the Board of Health as a whole, we, the rest of us, should take on this issue. She has appealed to the hearing committee. Am I saying that's what's, again, we've only done this, never,
Yes,
so,
and then it would go to the board as a recommendation,
right.
and then the board,
So whether we would entertain your appeal in this case, and our recommendation is that we will not entertain that appeal. So, right? Is that clear?
And that we would make appropriate
Yeah,
to the other two comments.
those things are, I think, are outside of this, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Always want to do better.
Well, and same here, and I appreciate it, and I certainly do not want to be the food truck that gives anybody salmonella. So, like I said, I cleared out my life savings, and it's the last thing that I want to do to.
Welcome to McHenry County.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We appreciate your business.
I'm sure
Thank you.
your inspection, you get squared away with environmental health.
Maybe we can have a meeting around the food truck someday.
But please,
Please do, it's Hungarian food.
Please pass your inspection, okay?
Will do, no concerns.
Because you've assured me that you will, so.
Hopefully without being out of turn, I do have confidence in my food.
Okay.
It's a trailer, but yes, my food truck trailer, my food business.
What type of food?
Hungarian food?
Hungarian food?
I serve Hungarian food,
Oh.
soups, stews, we have fried bread, it's street food, it's
Oh, very
delicious, I
Adjourn
serve
at
that in the
2:15.
summer. It's
Oh,
delicious.
My husband would live in Detroit.
A motion that we adjourn.
Well, let's just do it.
Oh, God, I'm
not sure,
A
as a
motion to
committee?
adjourn.
All right, you
Yeah.
make,
So we
you
do
make a
for
motion?
personnel committee.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All in favor adjourning?
I'll third.
All right, we're adjourned to 2:15.
You know, we have different words, same foods.
Yeah, and same food, I make a Kaiser
Sometimes being
Schmarrn,
informal is harder. It's like,
which is, we have a Hungarian name for it, it's not Kaiser Schmarrn, but
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that, yeah.
I know, but I want to make sure I get it correct when we do it. I kept saying, okay.
all right, I gotta go get
And
my
thank you for
kid.
bringing up the.
Thank you folks, thank you everybody for your time.
Yeah,
This Nom, can I speak with you?
No.
Yes,
Nom, she said it and I now started copying it. Nom.
It does, it does.